The Mafia boss caught her before she hit the ground. Blood in her shoes. 3 jobs in 24 hours. A body finally giving up. But Jade Mitchell made one critical mistake that night. She opened her eyes and looked into the face of the man holding her. Drake Moretti. Crime lord. Killer. The kind of man mothers warn their daughters about. And the second their eyes met, he made a decision that would sign both their death warrants. You're coming with me. Not a request. A command. And she was too weak to fight it. 48 hours later, she wakes up in his bed. Safe, fed, protected. He's given her $50,000 to clear her debts. Built her a future she never asked for. But there's a price for everything in his world. And when Jade discovers why he's really keeping her close, why he looked at her that night like he'd seen a ghost, everything she thought she knew about this dangerous man shatters. Because Drake Moretti doesn't save people. He owns them. So the real question isn't whether she'll escape. It's whether she'll want to. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The crystal chandeliers of the king's estate blazed like captured stars, casting fractured light across 500 guests who sipped champagne that cost more than Jade's monthly rent. She moved through them like a ghost, black dress, white apron, a tray of canapés balanced on trembling hands that had been steady 6 hours ago. Just 2 more hours, she told herself, the mantra that had gotten her through every impossible shift. 2 more hours. Then the bus to Sacred Heart Hospital for the night shift. Then home by dawn to check on Nia before her morning classes. Her feet screamed inside the 2 tight shoes she'd found at Goodwill. The blister on her heel had opened an hour ago, warm blood seeping into her sock with each step. But Jade had learned long ago that pain was just noise. You could turn down the volume if you focused on what mattered. What mattered was the $200 cash she'd earned tonight. What mattered was keeping the lights on, keeping Nia in college, keeping their heads above water for 1 more week. Excuse me. A woman in diamonds waved her empty glass with the casual dismissiveness of someone who'd never been invisible. These are warm. My apologies, ma'am. I'll get you a fresh one immediately. The woman had already turned away, back to a conversation about yacht renovations in Monaco. Jade swallowed the words that wanted to rise. Words about dignity, about exhaustion, about the fact that she had a degree in literature gathering dust because the world had other plans. She disappeared into the kitchen, into the controlled chaos of 50 staff members choreographing perfection for people who wouldn't remember their faces. The head caterer, Mrs. Chen, caught her eye and frowned. Jade, honey, you look pale. When's the last time you ate? I'm fine. The lie came easily, worn smooth by repetition. Just need some water. But when she reached for the pitcher, the kitchen tilted. Just slightly. Just enough to make her grab the counter, knuckles white, world swimming at the edges. Jade. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine in 3 years, not since her mother's cancer had devoured their savings and left Jade standing at a graveside, promising to keep Nia safe no matter what it cost. The cost was this: bruised feet, empty stomach, 72 hours since she'd slept more than 4 hours straight. The cost was watching her reflection in bathroom mirrors and barely recognizing the exhausted stranger staring back. But Nia was thriving. Nia had a future. That was the only arithmetic that mattered. Jade loaded her tray with fresh champagne and pushed back through the swinging doors into the golden glow of wealth she'd never belonged to. What dreams have you sacrificed to keep someone else alive? Drop a comment below. Your story matters. Across the ballroom, separated by a canyon of class and consequence, Drake Moretti stood in expensive isolation. His suit was Italian, custom tailored to shoulders that had carried the weight of an empire since he was 23. His watch cost more than most people's cars. His reputation entered rooms before he did, a shadow that made grown men nervous and smart ones careful. He was 34 years old, controlled territories from New York to Miami, and couldn't remember the last time someone had touched him without wanting something. Mr. Moretti. Angelo appeared at his elbow, his most trusted lieutenant, the closest thing he had to a friend. The King's boys are asking if you'll join them for cigars on the terrace. Tell them I'll be there shortly. Angelo hesitated. You all right, boss? Why wouldn't I be? You've been staring at that same spot on the wall for 10 minutes. Drake's jaw tightened. He hadn't realized. The truth was, these events drained him, all performance, no substance. Handshakes with men he didn't trust. Toasts to marriages that might last if they were lucky. Everyone plays their role in the theater of power. He was good at his role. He'd been playing it so long he sometimes forgot where the performance ended and the real Drake began. If there was still a real Drake underneath the reputation. His phone buzzed. Another business message. Another problem requiring his attention. His empire ran on his decisions, his presence, his carefully cultivated image of a man who felt nothing and feared less. The lie was so perfect even he almost believed it. Boss. Angelo prompted. Go. I'll follow. But he didn't follow. Instead, Drake found himself watching the staff move through the crowd, wondering what it felt like to be so invisible. To slip through the world unnoticed, unburdened by reputation or expectation. His gaze snagged on a woman in a maid's uniform, her dark skin luminous under the chandeliers, her movements graceful despite an obvious limp. She was young, mid-20s, maybe, but carried herself with the weariness of someone much older. Something about her stillness in all the motion caught him. The way she seemed present but separate, seen but not really known. She reminded him of himself. The thought unsettled him enough that he looked away, draining his whiskey in one swallow. Sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford. Connection was a weakness. He'd learned that lesson early and well. But when he glanced back, she was still there, moving through the crowd with a tray that seemed to grow heavier with each step. And there was something about the set of her shoulders, the determined grace of someone holding on by sheer will. She swayed. Just slightly, barely noticeable in the crush of bodies and celebration. But Drake noticed. He'd spent his life reading people, sensing weakness, identifying threats. This wasn't a threat. This was someone about to break. He was moving before he decided to move, cutting through the crowd with a kind of authority that made people part without thinking. He reached her just as her knees buckled, just as the tray slipped from her fingers, just as her eyes rolled back and she fell. Into his arms. The champagne glasses shattered against marble like breaking stars. The crash silenced conversations in a spreading circle. But Drake didn't hear it. He heard only her breath, shallow and quick against his chest. Felt only her weight, slight and trembling. Saw only her face, beautiful and exhausted, finally at rest. And something he'd thought long dead stirred in his chest. Something dangerous and tender and completely unwelcome. Now you're all mine, he murmured, the words escaping before he could stop them, rough with an emotion he didn't want to name. He didn't mean possession. He meant, I've got you. You're safe. I won't let you fall. The world came back in fragments. Soft fabric against her cheek. The scent of cedar and expensive cologne. A heartbeat, steady and strong, that wasn't hers. Jade's eyes fluttered open to find herself cradled against a chest that felt like carved stone beneath fine wool. Strong arms held her with a gentleness that contradicted their obvious strength. And above her, a face that made her breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with fainting. He was beautiful in the way storms were beautiful. Dark and dangerous and impossible to look away from. Sharp jawline shadowed with stubble. Eyes so deep brown they were nearly black. Watching her with an intensity that should have frightened her but didn't. There was something in those eyes. Something that looked almost like recognition. Easy. His voice was rough velvet, low enough that only she could hear it over the murmur of concerned guests. "You're all right. I've got you." Jade tried to speak, but her throat was desert dry. Humiliation flooded through her, hot and sharp. She'd fainted. In front of everyone. In front of him, whoever he was. The Kings would never hire her again. Mrs. Chen would be furious. She'd lose $200 she desperately needed. Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I need the champagne. I need to clean. You need to sit down." Not a suggestion. A command, but spoken with such quiet certainty that it didn't feel like control. It felt like care. Drake shifted her weight, one arm supporting her back, the other beneath her knees, and stood in a single fluid motion. The ballroom spun, or maybe that was just her head. Jade clutched at his lapel, fingers digging into fabric that probably cost more than her car. "Please, I can walk." "You don't have to. You'll fall." 2 words. Absolute truth. She would fall. Her legs felt like water, her vision still spotty at the edges. But more than that, something in the way he said it, not judgment but certainty, made her believe he understood what falling meant. That he'd caught people before, or wished someone had caught him. The crowd parted. Jade caught glimpses of faces, shocked, curious, some judging. Mrs. Chen's worried expression. Angelo, the man who'd been speaking to Drake earlier, moving ahead to open doors. And throughout it all, Drake moved with unhurried purpose, as if carrying an exhausted maid through a high-society wedding was the most natural thing in the world. He carried her through a side door, down a quiet hallway where the music faded to a distant pulse. Angelo opened another door, a private sitting room, all cream leather and dark wood and windows overlooking manicured gardens. Drake lowered her onto a sofa with a care that made her chest ache. She should pull away. Should insist she was fine. Should get back to work before she lost everything. But when he released her, she felt the absence like cold water. "Water," Drake said to Angelo without looking away from her. "And food. Something substantial. Now." Angelo disappeared. The door clicked shut. And suddenly they were alone. A mafia boss whose name she didn't know and a maid who'd just humiliated herself in front of half of New York's elite. Drake crouched in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. The gesture surprised her. Men with power didn't make themselves lower. They towered, they dominated, they reminded you of your place. He was reminding her they were equal. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Jade's mind raced, trying to remember. "This morning. There was coffee." "Coffee isn't food." "I know that." The words came sharper than she intended, pride flaring even through exhaustion. I was running late, and there wasn't time." "How many jobs?" The question caught her off guard. "What? How many jobs are you working?" His gaze dropped to her feet, to the blood-stained heel of her shoe that she'd forgotten about. His jaw tightened. "How long have you been on your feet today?" No one asked questions like that. No one looked at the staff long enough to notice blood or exhaustion or the weight they carried. Jade felt something crack inside her chest. Some wall she'd built to survive in a world that didn't see her. 3, she whispered. "I work 3 jobs. And I've been on my feet since 5 this morning." It was 11 p.m. Something shifted in Drake's expression, a flash of anger that wasn't directed at her, followed by something softer that looked almost like pain. He understood. Somehow, this man in his $1,000 suit understood what it meant to push past breaking. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jade." It came out barely louder than a breath. "Jade Mitchell. Jade." He said it like he was testing the weight of it, like it mattered. "I'm Drake. Just Drake. Not a title. Not a position. An offering of equality she hadn't expected." The door opened. Angelo entered with a bottle of water and a plate of food from the reception. Salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. Real food, not the picked-over scraps the staff would eat later. Drake took the plate, dismissed Angelo with a nod, and held it out to her. Jade stared at it. At him. At this impossible moment that made no sense. "I can't," she said. "I need to get back to work. You need to eat. Firm. Gentle. Immovable. Everything else can wait. You don't understand. I'll lose my job. I need the money. My sister." Her voice broke. God, she was going to cry. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of this stranger who'd already seen her at her weakest. But Drake's hand found hers, warm, calloused in ways that spoke of work she wouldn't have expected. His thumb traced a gentle circle on her knuckles. "Breathe, Jade." She did. One breath. Then another. "You won't lose anything," he continued, his voice carrying a weight of authority that made it sound like a promise. "No one will touch your job. You have my word." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why do you care?" For a long moment, Drake didn't answer. His eyes held hers, and in them she saw something that matched the hollow ache in her own chest. Loneliness. The bone-deep exhaustion of carrying weight alone. The desperate, hidden hope that maybe, just maybe, someone might see you. Really see you. "Because," he said finally, "you reminded me what it looks like when someone's forgotten how to let themselves be human." The truth in those words hit her like a physical thing. Jade's vision blurred with tears she'd been holding back for months, maybe years. And when Drake squeezed her hand gently, she didn't pull away. She held on. "Eat," he said softly. "Please." So she did. And he stayed, sitting on the floor beside the sofa, their hands still connected, while the party continued without them. Neither noticed. Neither cared. Jade woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. 4-3 heartbeats. She didn't remember. Didn't know where she was or why the sheets felt like silk against her skin or why her body didn't ache with its usual morning protest. Then it crashed back. The wedding. The fainting. Drake's arms. His hands holding hers while she ate, while exhaustion finally claimed her, while he'd. Oh God. She sat up too fast, head spinning. She was in a bedroom, his bedroom, she realized with mounting panic, taking in the masculine decor, the expensive everything. She was still in her uniform, minus her shoes. Someone had draped a blanket over her. And on the nightstand sat a glass of water, 2 aspirin, and a note in bold, slanted handwriting. "You needed sleep more than I needed the bed. Don't worry about work. I handled it. There's breakfast downstairs when you're ready. D." Jade's hands trembled as she held the note. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. She didn't know this man. Didn't know what he wanted, what he expected, what debt she'd just incurred by accepting his help. Nothing was free. She'd learned that lesson early and well. She found her shoes, cleaned, she noticed, the blood gone, and slipped them on with shaking fingers. Her phone showed 23 missed calls. Her heart stopped. Nia. Something had happened to Nia. No. The calls were from Mrs. Chen. From the hospital asking where she was. from the cleaning service wondering why she'd missed her shift. 3 jobs. She'd missed shifts at 3 jobs because she'd been sleeping in some stranger's bed like she had the luxury of rest. Jade's chest tightened with panic so familiar it felt like coming home. This was her life falling apart. This was the consequence of one moment of weakness. This was a knock at the door. Jade. Drake's voice, muffled through wood. Are you awake? She should answer. Should thank him and leave and never look back. Should return to the world that made sense, where she knew the rules, knew how to survive. But her throat closed around the words. I'm leaving breakfast outside the door, Drake continued after a moment. Take your time. Angelo will drive you wherever you need to go. Footsteps retreated. Silence returned. And Jade stood in the center of his bedroom feeling like she was suffocating under the weight of kindness she didn't know how to accept. Drake stood in his kitchen, staring at coffee he wasn't drinking. What the hell had he been thinking? He'd brought a woman to his home. His private home, not one of the penthouses he kept for appearances or business. The place where he slept, where his guard came down, where no one was allowed. And he'd let her sleep in his bed while he spent the night in the guest room, checking on her every hour like some kind of, what? Concerned citizen? Good Samaritan? Fool. Boss. Angelo appeared in the doorway, reading carefully. He knew Drake's moods better than anyone. The girl's awake. Her name is Jade. Angelo's eyebrow rose slightly. Jade. Right. Should I prepare the car? Yes. Drake set down his mug with more force than necessary. And make sure she gets wherever she needs to go safely. Give her this. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Cash, enough to cover the shifts she'd missed, and then some. You sure about this? About what? Getting involved. Angelo's expression was carefully neutral, but his meaning was clear. Drake didn't do this. Didn't bring people into his world, didn't play hero, didn't care beyond what served his interests. I'm not involved, Drake said flatly. I helped someone who needed help. That's all. If you say so, boss. I do say so. But the lie tasted bitter. Because the truth was, he hadn't stopped thinking about her since the moment she'd collapsed into his arms. The exhaustion in her eyes. The pride that kept her standing when her body was screaming to fall. The way she'd looked at him, not with fear, not with calculation, but with a desperate, vulnerable honesty that had cracked something in his chest. She reminded him of who he used to be. Before the empire. Before the reputation. Before he'd learned that power meant isolation and caring meant weakness. He'd spent years building walls. One fainting woman shouldn't be able to breach them. But she had. And that terrified him more than any rival family, any betrayal, any threat his world had ever thrown at him. The door to the hallway opened. Jade appeared, still in her uniform, hair pulled back, face carefully blank. But her eyes held that same guarded expression he saw in the mirror every morning. The look of someone protecting themselves from disappointment. Thank you, she said, the words stiff and formal. For everything. But I need to go. Of course. Drake kept his distance, hands in his pockets. Professional. Detached. Safe. Angelo will take you anywhere you need. That's not necessary. I can take the bus. Angelo will drive you. Their eyes met. Jade's jaw tightened. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's basic human decency. In my experience, nothing is basic. Everything costs something. Her voice was quiet but firm, edged with a bitterness that spoke of hard lessons learned. What do you want from me, Drake? The question hung between them like a challenge. What did he want? To see her again? To make sure she was okay? To understand why a stranger's pain had reached through his carefully constructed armor? Nothing, he said finally. I want nothing from you. Jade laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. Everyone wants something. I'm not everyone. No, she agreed, her gaze traveling over him. The expensive clothes, the quiet authority, the controlled power that hummed around him like an electrical current. You're really not. Which makes this even more confusing. She crossed to where he stood, and Drake found himself tensing. Not from threat, but from proximity. She was close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to smell the faint lavender from his guest soap. Thank you for catching me, Jade said softly. Thank you for the food, the sleep, the kindness. But I can't, her voice cracked slightly. I can't afford whatever this is. I have a life that barely works, and I can't let it fall apart because some gorgeous stranger decided to play hero for a night. Gorgeous. The word landed like a punch. She thought he was gorgeous. And she was walking away anyway. Because she was smart. Smarter than him, clearly. Jade. Please don't. She stepped back, rebuilding her walls right in front of him. Just don't. Let me go back to my life. You go back to yours. We're from different worlds, Drake. Last night was. It was a moment. That's all. But that wasn't all. They both knew it wasn't all. Drake pulled the envelope from his pocket and held it out. Then take this. For the shifts you missed. Jade stared at it like it might bite her. I can't. You can't afford not to. Gentle but true. You said you have a sister. That you need the money. So take it. No strings. No debt. Just take care of yourself, Jade. For a long moment, she didn't move. Pride warred with necessity on her face. A battle Drake recognized because he'd fought it himself once, a lifetime ago, before pride became the only thing he could afford. Finally, Jade took the envelope. Her fingers brushed his, and the contact sent electricity up his arm. Thank you, she whispered. Then she turned and walked away, following Angelo to the car that would take her back to her world. Drake stood in his empty kitchen, listening to the front door close, feeling the silence settle around him like a familiar coat. He'd done the right thing. Let her go. Kept his distance. Protected them both from a complication neither of them needed. So why did it feel like he'd just made the worst mistake of his life? 3 days. Jade had made it 3 days without thinking about Drake Moretti every waking moment. That was a lie. She'd thought about him constantly. While scrubbing floors at the hospital, while serving coffee at the diner, while lying awake at 3 a.m. counting the cracks in her ceiling. The weight of his arms. The gentleness in his voice. The way he'd looked at her like she mattered. She'd Googled him, of course. Found articles that made her blood run cold. Alleged crime boss. Suspected ties to organized crime. Dangerous. Untouchable. The man who'd held her while she slept was a criminal. A predator in expensive suits. She should be grateful she'd escaped. So why did she keep touching the place on her hand where his thumb had traced circles? Jade? You okay? Nia's voice cut through her thoughts. Her sister sat across their tiny kitchen table, calculus textbook open, concern creasing her forehead. You've been stirring that tea for like 5 minutes. Sorry. Just tired. You're always tired. Nia closed her book. Something happened at that wedding, didn't it? Mrs. Chen called here looking for you. Said you disappeared. I got sick. Someone helped me. That's all. Someone. Nia's eyes narrowed with the perceptiveness of a 19-year-old who'd grown up too fast. What kind of someone? Before Jade could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, Bill collectors had that number memorized, but something made her slide to accept. Miss Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Grace Moretti. I'm calling regarding your mother's estate. Jade's heart stopped. My mother's been gone for 3 years. There is no estate. I understand this may come as a surprise, but we've discovered some unclaimed assets. I represent a client who's been settling old accounts in the neighborhood where your mother lived. There's money owed to you. Quite a substantial amount. But the paperwork requires an in-person meeting to verify identity and sign documents. How much money? $50,000. The number punched the air from Jade's lungs. $50,000. Nia's tuition paid for 2 years. Their rent is secure. The weight that had been crushing her for 3 years, suddenly, impossibly lifted. There has to be a mistake. No mistake. Can you come to this address tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Grace rattled off a location in Manhattan, one of the expensive districts Jade only saw from bus windows. My client will explain everything. Who's your client? A pause. You'll find out tomorrow, Miss Mitchell. I promise you, this is legitimate. The call ended. Jade stared at her phone, heart hammering. What was that? Nia demanded. I don't know, Jade whispered. But I'm about to find out. The address led to an office building that made Jade feel underdressed in her cleanest jeans and borrowed blazer. The elevator opened to a penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. And standing by those windows, hands in his pockets, looking like he belonged among all this wealth and power. Drake. Jade's stomach dropped. What is this? He turned, and something flickered across his face. Relief? Nervousness? She couldn't read him the way she had that night, when vulnerability had stripped both their masks away. Please don't be angry, he said quietly. The money. The estate. That was all. Her voice rose. You lied to me? I didn't lie. Grace did on my instruction. Drake moved toward her, then stopped, keeping distance between them like he knew she might bolt. Your mother did have medical debt that was sold to a collections company I own. I bought it. Forgave it. And I'm compensating you for the interest and penalties you've been paying for 3 years. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would you do that? Because you shouldn't have to work yourself to death for a debt that wasn't yours. You investigated me. Betrayal burned in her chest. You looked into my life without permission. I know. His jaw tightened. I know, and I'm sorry. But Jade, you collapsed from exhaustion. You're working 3 jobs. I had the means to help, So you played God? Jade's hands shook. So you decided what I needed without asking? Do you have any idea how that feels? To have someone with power swoop in and rearrange your life like you're some charity case. You're not a charity case. Then what am I? She stepped closer, anger and hurt and confusion warring inside her. What am I to you, Drake? Because this, she gestured at the office, the view, the impossible reality of $50,000. This isn't normal. People don't do this for strangers. You're not a stranger. I am. We met once. For a few hours. You don't know me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for your sister. I know you carry weight that isn't yours because you love someone enough to sacrifice everything. I know you're proud and strong and you'd rather break than bend. His voice roughened. And I know that when you fell into my arms, something in me recognized something in you. Loneliness. Exhaustion. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone as you think you are. The words hit Jade like physical blows. True, all of them true, and she hated that he could see her so clearly. You can't save me, she whispered. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to give you a choice. Drake pulled an envelope from his desk, not cash this time, but legal documents. This money is yours. No strings. No conditions. Take it and walk away. I'll never contact you again. And if I don't walk away? The question hung between them, dangerous and electric. Drake's eyes darkened. Then we figure out what this is. Together. You're a criminal. Jade forced herself to say it. I Googled you. The things they say are mostly true, he finished. I won't lie to you about what I am, Jade. I've done things I'm not proud of. Built an empire on fear and control. But I'm trying. His voice cracked slightly. I'm trying to be better than that. And when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human instead of just powerful. Jade's vision blurred. This was insane. He was dangerous. She should take the money and run. But when she looked at Drake, she didn't see a criminal. She saw a man who'd held her with tenderness, who'd given up his bed so she could sleep, who'd looked at her exhaustion and understood it bone deep. She saw someone as lonely as she was. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to let someone help me. I don't know how to trust that you won't hurt you. Drake closed the distance between them, slow enough that she could retreat if she wanted. I won't promise I'm perfect, Jade. I won't promise this will be easy. But I promise I see you. Really see you. And I'm asking, no, I'm begging, for a chance to know you beyond one desperate night. His hand lifted, hovering near her face, asking permission. Jade's breath caught. Every rational thought screamed at her to leave, to protect herself, to return to the hard, lonely safety of her old life. But when had safety ever made her feel alive? She leaned into his touch. Drake's palm cupped her cheek, warm and calloused and gentle. His thumb traced her cheekbone the same way it had traced her knuckles 3 nights ago, like she was precious, like she mattered. One chance, Jade whispered. But I need honesty. No more investigating me. No more surprises. If we're doing this, we do it as equals. Equals, Drake agreed. I like the sound of that. And I'm keeping the money. For Nia. His lips quivered, almost a smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. I'd be insulted if you didn't. Before Jade could second-guess herself, she stood on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Just briefly. Just enough to taste the risk and the possibility. Drake's breath shuddered. His other hand found her waist, anchoring her gently. When she pulled back, his eyes were darker than midnight and twice as dangerous. Was that a yes? He asked roughly. That was a maybe, Jade corrected. You're going to have to work for the yes. Good. Drake's smile was real now, transforming his entire face. I'm very good at working for what I want. A knock interrupted them. Angelo stepped in, tablet in hand, then stopped short at the sight of them standing so close. Boss, we have a... His gaze flicked between them. Should I come back? No, Drake said, not taking his eyes off Jade. What is it? Security flagged something. The king's family knows about her. Angelo's expression turned grim. They know you've been making inquiries, moving money around. They're asking questions. Jade felt Drake tense. Define asking questions. The kind that come with surveillance and threats. Ice flooded Jade's veins. What does that mean? Drake's jaw tightened, but when he looked at her, his voice was steady. It means that by trying to help you, I may have put you in danger. The kings don't like it when I take interest in things, or people, outside my usual sphere. So this was a mistake. The words hurt to say. Being here. This us. No. Drake's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. This isn't a mistake. But it is complicated. And I need to know right now, Jade. Are you willing to trust me? To let me keep you safe while we figure this out? Trust. The thing she'd sworn never to give easily. But she'd already fallen. Might as well see where the landing took her. Yes, Jade whispered. I trust you. Drake's exhale was pure relief. Then you're staying with me. Just until this blows over. Drake. No arguments. Please. His forehead touched hers. I won't lose you. Not now. Not when I just found you. And despite every logical reason to refuse, Jade nodded. Because sometimes trust wasn't logical. Sometimes it was just necessary. Drake's penthouse felt like a gilded cage. Jade stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blur into constellations, while Angelo coordinated security details in hushed tones with Drake across the room. 2 days. She'd been here 2 days, and the walls were already closing in. Not from the space, which was massive, but from the feeling of being kept. Protected, Drake called it. Trapped, her instincts whispered. He's doing this because he cares, Nia had said on the phone earlier, excited about her sister's billionaire boyfriend in a way that made Jade's stomach twist. Because Drake wasn't her boyfriend. He was a complication she couldn't afford and couldn't seem to walk away from. You should eat something. Drake's voice came from behind her, soft in the growing darkness. You barely touched dinner. Not hungry. Jade. I'm fine. The sharpness in her voice surprised them both. She turned to face him, arms wrapped around herself. I'm sorry. I'm not used to this. Being still. Being watched over. It feels like a cage. Drake finished, understanding flickering in his eyes. He moved to the bar cart, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and held one out to her. I know the feeling. Jade took the glass, their fingers brushing. How could you possibly know what this feels like? You have everything. Power, money, freedom. Do I? Drake's laugh was bitter. I haven't had freedom since I was 17 years old, Jade. Since the night my father bled out on our kitchen floor and left me an empire I never asked for. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jade's breath caught. Drake. He drained half his whiskey in one swallow. You want honesty? You want to know who I am beyond the rumors? He set down his glass with a sharp click. My father was Antonio Moretti. Small-time operator, big-time debts. When I was 17, his creditors came collecting. They shot him in front of me and my little sister, Gianna. She was 12. Jade's hand flew to her mouth. They told me I had 2 choices, Drake continued, his voice flat in a way that spoke of old, deep pain. Take over his operations and work off the debt, or watch them kill Gianna too. So I took over. Learned fast. Got ruthless faster. By the time I was 23, I'd paid off the debt and controlled half the operations in the city. By 30, I owned the people who'd killed my father. What did you do to them? Jade whispered. Drake's eyes met hers. Dark, haunted, honest. What do you think I did? She should be horrified. Should be running for the door. But all she saw was a 17-year-old boy trying to save his sister, making impossible choices in an impossible situation. Where's Gianna now? Jade asked softly. Pain flickered across Drake's face. Medical school. Stanford. She doesn't talk to me anymore. Hasn't in 5 years. She got out, built a clean life, and decided I was too dirty to be part of it. He laughed without humor. She's right. She's better off. You saved her life. I became a monster to do it. That's not heroic, Jade. That's just survival with a body count. Jade set down her glass and crossed to him. Drake stiffened as she approached, like he expected judgment or rejection. Instead, she took his hand, the same hand that had held hers so gently, that had caught her when she fell. You were a child, she said firmly. A child forced to become something you never chose. That's not the same as being a monster. Isn't it? Drake's voice cracked. I've hurt people, Jade. Ordered things done that keep me awake at night. I've built an empire on fear because it was the only way to keep Gianna safe, to keep myself from ending up like my father. And now? He looked at their joined hands. Now I've dragged you into this world. Put you in danger because I was selfish enough to want something good in my life. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to stay. Why? The question was raw, desperate. Why would you choose this? Choose me. Jade's throat tightened. Because she understood. God help her, she understood too well. When I was 16, she began, her own voice shaking now. My father left. Just walked out one morning and never came back. No note. No explanation. My mother was already sick. We just didn't know how sick yet. She'd been hiding the symptoms because we couldn't afford doctors. Drake's hand tightened on hers. I had to grow up overnight, Jade continued. Had to quit the school plays and debate team and all the stupid teenage things I loved because someone had to work. Someone had to keep us fed. Nia was only 10. She needed me to be strong. That's too much weight for a 16-year-old, Drake said softly. Same as 17. Jade met his eyes. We both became adults too soon, Drake. We both sacrificed who we could have been to protect the people we loved. The difference is, you built walls to keep everyone out. I made myself invisible so no one would see how much I was breaking. Until you literally broke, Drake said, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. Until you fell. Until you caught me. Jade's vision blurred with tears she'd been holding back since the day her mother died. Do you know what it's like to be invisible for so long that you forget you even exist? To work yourself to exhaustion because at least exhaustion is feeling something. Yes. Drake pulled her closer, his forehead touching hers. Yes, I know exactly what that's like. I've spent 17 years being feared instead of known. Respected instead of loved. Powerful instead of human. Until a woman collapsed in my arms and reminded me what it felt like to want to protect someone instead of control them. To care instead of calculate. His hands cupped her face. You scared the hell out of me, Jade. Because for the first time in 17 years, I felt something other than rage or emptiness. I felt hope. The tears spilled over. Jade didn't try to stop them. I'm scared too. Scared of needing you. Scared of what happens when this ends. What if it doesn't have to end? Everything ends. Drake. My father left. My mother died. Every good thing I've ever had has. I'm not leaving. His voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. I'm not your father. I'm not walking away because things get hard. I'm staying, Jade. For as long as you'll let me. Even if I'm broken? Especially then. Because I'm broken too. Maybe we can figure out how to be broken together. Jade laughed through her tears, a wet, messy sound that was somehow more honest than anything she'd said in years. That's the worst romantic speech I've ever heard. I told you I'm not good at this. But Drake was smiling now, really smiling, and it transformed him into someone younger, lighter, almost happy. I'm better at threatening people. Please don't threaten me. Never. He kissed her forehead, her temples, her tear-stained cheeks. Never you. When his lips found hers, it was different from their first kiss. This wasn't testing or questioning. This was recognition. Two wounded people finding safety in each other's scars. Have you ever met someone who understood your pain without you having to explain it? Tell us in the comments. Connection is powerful. Jade melted into him, hands fisting in his shirt, and for the first time in 3 years, she let herself feel the grief, the exhaustion, the desperate, terrifying hope that maybe she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. Drake held her like she was precious, like she mattered, like he'd been waiting his whole life for her to fall into his arms. "Tell me about your mother," he murmured against her hair. "Tell me about her." So she did. Late into the night, curled on his couch with city lights painting shadows across their faces, Jade told him about her mother's laugh, her strength, her final days. And Drake told her about his father, about Gianna, about the boy he'd been before blood and survival had remade him. They traded wounds like gifts, offered pain like trust. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, between confessions and comfortable silences, Jade realized something terrifying. She was falling in love with Drake Moretti. Not despite his darkness, but because he'd let her see it. Because he'd trusted her with his truth the same way she'd trusted him with hers. "What are you thinking?" Drake asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. Jade looked up at him, this complicated, dangerous, tender man who'd caught her when she fell and refused to let go. "I'm thinking," she said softly, "that maybe broken isn't the same as unfixable." Drake's arms tightened around her. "No, it's not." And in that moment, wrapped in each other and their shared scars, they both chose to believe it. Jade woke to the smell of coffee and something burning. For a moment, she luxuriated in the unfamiliar comfort. Silk sheets, a mattress that didn't have springs poking through, sunlight warm on her face. Then reality crashed back. She was in Drake's guest room. Had been 5 days now. 5 days of living in this strange bubble where danger lurked outside but inside felt almost like home. The thought terrified her. She pulled on one of Drake's shirts. He'd given her a drawer full after she'd refused to let him buy her an entire wardrobe, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. The sight that greeted her stopped her in her tracks. Drake Moretti, feared Mafia boss, stood at the stove wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," furiously waving a dish towel at a smoking pan. His hair was disheveled, there was flour on his cheek, and he was cursing in Italian with a creativity that would have been impressive if it wasn't so adorable. "Need help?" Jade asked, fighting a smile. Drake spun around, looking caught. "I was making you breakfast. It's not going well. I can see that." Jade crossed to the stove and peered at what might have once been pancakes but now resembled charcoal discs. "When's the last time you cooked?" "Never." Drake rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. "I have people for that. But you mentioned yesterday that your mother used to make you pancakes on Sundays, and I thought—" He gestured helplessly at the disaster. "This was stupid." Something warm bloomed in Jade's chest. "You tried to make me pancakes because I mentioned my mother?" "Like I said. Stupid." "No." Jade took the spatula from his hand, their fingers brushing. "It's the sweetest thing anyone's ever done for me." Drake's eyes softened. "Even though they're inedible?" "Especially because they're inedible. It means you tried." She reached up and wiped the flour from his cheek. "Come on. Let me show you how it's done." "But you're helping." For the next hour, they moved around the kitchen in a dance of domesticity that felt both foreign and natural. Drake proved to be a terrible cook but an excellent sous chef. Following her instructions with the same focused intensity, he probably brought to running his empire. "Not that much vanilla, Drake, that's a 1/4 cup." "You said generously." "Generously is not the same as drowning." But Jade was laughing, really laughing, and the sound felt like sunlight after endless rain. Drake grinned, a real boyish grin that made him look years younger. I'm starting to think cooking isn't my calling. You think? Jade hip-checked him playfully. Stick to whatever it is you do. Terrifying people and making money? Exactly. Leave the pancakes to me. They ate at the kitchen island, sitting close enough that their knees touched. The pancakes were fluffy and golden, everything the first batch hadn't been. Drake ate 4 of them, and Jade pretended not to notice the way he watched her like she was something precious. Tell me something, Drake said, drizzling more syrup onto his plate. If you could do anything, money and responsibility no object, what would you do? Jade set down her fork. No one had asked her that in years. She'd almost forgotten how to dream beyond survival. I'd teach, she said finally. Literature. High school, maybe college. I'd help kids fall in love with stories the way I did. Show them that books aren't just words. They're windows into other lives, other possibilities. She paused. What about you? Drake was quiet for a long moment. I'd build things. Real things. My degree is in architecture. Did you know that? I had 1 semester at Columbia before my father died. I used to design buildings in my head. Libraries, community centers, places where people could gather and feel safe. That's beautiful, Jade whispered. That's impossible. Drake's voice turned bitter. Men like me don't get second chances. We don't get to walk away and build libraries. Why not? Because the world doesn't work that way. Because I've done things that can't be undone. Because. Jade placed her hand over his. What if the world is wrong? What if you get to decide who you become next? Drake stared at their joined hands. You make me believe in possibilities I stopped believing in 17 years ago. Good, Jade said softly. You make me believe I'm worth more than just surviving. The air between them shifted, charged, intimate, full of unspoken words. Drake lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. Drake led her to a room she hadn't seen before. His office, but not the cold professional space she'd expected. The walls were covered in architectural sketches, some framed, others pinned haphazardly. Buildings that existed only in his imagination, rendered in precise detail. I still draw, Drake admitted, looking almost embarrassed. Late at night when I can't sleep. When I need to remember who I was before. Before you became who you had to be, Jade finished. She moved closer to the drawings, studying them. Each one was beautiful. Soaring lines, spaces designed for light and community. Drake, these are incredible. They're fantasies. They're hopes. She turned to face him. Don't dismiss them. Drake crossed to her, and in the afternoon light filtering through the windows, Jade saw him clearly. Not the Mafia boss, not the feared criminal, but a man who'd buried his dreams so deep he'd almost forgotten they existed. You're changing me, he said, his voice raw. I've spent 17 years building walls, and you're making me want to tear them down. Is that a bad thing? It's terrifying. His hands found her waist, drawing her closer. You're terrifying. Not because you're threatening, but because you make me want things I can't have. Like what? Like a normal life. Like morning pancakes and terrible cooking. Like someone who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't run away. His forehead touched hers. Like love. Jade's breath caught. Love. The word hung between them, huge and dangerous and impossibly right. I'm not running, she whispered. You should be. I'm going to hurt you, Jade. Not because I want to, but because men like me, we destroy the things we love. It's what we do. Then don't be that man. Jade cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Choose to be someone different. With me. For me. For us. Us, Drake repeated, like he was testing the word. I like the sound of that. Me too. He kissed her then, slow and deep and achingly tender. Not the desperate kiss of their first night, but something deeper. A promise. A choice. A beginning. When they broke apart, Drake rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. Stay with me, he murmured. Not because of the danger. Not because you need protection. Stay because you want to. Because this. He gestured between them. Because this is real. Jade's heart hammered. Every logical bone in her body screamed this was too fast, too much, too dangerous. But her heart, her battered, exhausted heart, sang a different song. I'm already staying, she said. I think I've been staying since the moment you caught me. Drake's smile was sunrise after an endless night. Best thing I ever caught. They spent the rest of the afternoon in his office, Drake showing her more sketches while Jade told him about her favorite books. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, favorite foods, dreams deferred and hopes rekindled. Angelo interrupted once with security updates, took one look at them curled together on the sofa, and quietly backed out with something that might have been a smile. As evening fell and the city lights began to glow, Jade felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Not the fragile peace of survival, but the deep peace of being known, being seen, being cherished. What are you thinking? Drake asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. I'm thinking, Jade said softly, that I could get used to this. Yeah. Hope flickered in his eyes. Fragile, precious hope that made him look almost vulnerable. Yeah. She kissed him gently. I really could. Outside, the world continued. Dangerous, complicated, full of threats they'd have to face. But inside Drake's arms, Jade let herself believe in something she'd thought lost forever. A future worth fighting for. Jade should have known happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. She woke to an empty bed, Drake's bed, where she'd finally allowed herself to sleep beside him last night, wrapped in his arms like she belonged there. The sheets were cold. He'd been gone for hours. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to hum with tension. She found her phone on the nightstand. 17 missed calls from Nia. Her blood turned to ice. Nia? What's wrong? Are you okay? Where the hell have you been? Her sister's voice was sharp with anger and fear. I've been calling for hours. There were men here, Jade. At our apartment. Looking for you. Jade's legs nearly gave out. What men? Did they hurt you? No, but they asked questions. About you. About where you've been. About... Nia's voice cracked. About Drake Moretti. Jade, what have you gotten involved in? The things they said about him. I can explain. Can you? Because they told me he's a criminal. That people who get close to him end up dead or disappeared. They showed me pictures, Jade. Crime scenes. Bodies. They said you're in danger. That we're in danger because of you. Nia, listen to me. No. You listen to me. I've been scared out of my mind thinking something happened to you, and you've been shacking up with some mobster? What were you thinking? Mom died protecting us, and you're just throwing that away for what? Money. A guy. Each word was a knife. It's not like that. Drake isn't. Isn't what? A criminal? Because that's exactly what he is. God, Jade, you're supposed to be the smart one. The responsible one. And you're sleeping with a man who ruins lives for a living. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Nia's voice broke into sobs. Because right now, all I understand is that my sister lied to me. Put us both in danger. And for what? Jade opened her mouth, but no words came. Because what could she say? That Drake made her feel seen? That for the first time in 3 years, she'd felt like more than just a ghost moving through life? How could she explain that to Nia when she barely understood it herself? I have to go, Nia said coldly. I'm staying with friends until you figure out your life. Don't call me until this is over. The line went dead. Jade stood frozen, phone trembling in her hand, as her world collapsed around her. Nia was right. She'd been selfish. Reckless. She'd let herself fall for a man whose world was violence and blood, and now her sister, the one person she'd sacrificed everything for, was in danger because of it. Jade! She spun around. Drake stood in the doorway, still in last night's clothes, looking exhausted. There was blood on his knuckles. What did you do? The words came out cold. Drake's expression shuttered. What are you talking about? Your people went to my apartment. Threatened my sister. Showed her pictures meant to terrify her. Jade's voice rose. What the hell did you do, Drake? I didn't send anyone to your apartment. But something flickered in his eyes. Guilt. Knowledge. Don't lie to me. Not now. Drake's jaw tightened. I didn't send them. The Kings did. They're trying to flush you out, make you run so they can. He stopped abruptly. So they can what? Jade stepped closer, ice flooding her veins. Finish what you started? What exactly is happening here, Drake? What aren't you telling me? It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. She was shouting now, all the fear and anger and betrayal exploding out of her. My sister is terrified. Men showed up at our home. And you're standing there with blood on your hands telling me it's complicated? I was protecting you. By putting Nia in danger? By bringing your war to my doorstep. Jade's laugh was bitter. Some protection. You think I wanted this? Drake's control cracked, anger bleeding through. You think I wanted the Kings to target you? I've spent the last week trying to negotiate a truce, trying to keep you safe. Without telling me? Jade's voice dropped to something sharp and dangerous. You made decisions about my life, my safety, my sister without including me? Just like the money. Just like bringing me here. You keep deciding what's best for me like I'm some damsel who needs saving instead of a grown woman who deserves a choice. I was trying to keep you alive. I don't want to just survive anymore, Drake. I want to live. But I can't do that with someone who treats me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. The words hung between them like broken glass. Drake's face went carefully blank, the same mask he'd worn the night they met. Distance. Control. The walls slamming back into place. You're right, he said quietly. I should have told you. I should have given you a choice. But I didn't because the truth is, his voice roughened. The truth is I'm terrified of losing you. So terrified that I tried to control the situation instead of trusting you. Just like I control everything else in my life. I'm not a situation to be controlled. Jade's eyes burned with unshed tears. I'm a person. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe Nia's right. Maybe this, us, was a mistake from the start. Don't say that. Drake moved toward her, but stopped when she stepped back. The hurt in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. Jade, please. I need to think. She wrapped her arms around herself. I need space to figure out if I'm running towards something real or just running away from my life. And what am I supposed to do? Just let you walk out? Let the kings see. You're doing it again. Jade's voice cracked. Deciding for me. Telling me what I can and can't do. You say you're different from other men, Drake, but you're treating me exactly the same way, like I belong to you. Like you own me. That's not. Drake's hands fisted at his sides. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Now you're all mine. Those were your words. The first words you said to me. And maybe I should have listened to what they really meant. Those words meant I'd keep you safe. Drake's control shattered completely. They meant I'd caught you and I wouldn't let you fall. They meant... His voice broke. They meant I was already falling for you, and I was terrified of what that meant. Jade's tears spilled over. I was falling too. But Drake, love isn't about catching someone and holding them so tight they can't breathe. It's about trusting them to stand on their own. To make their own choices, even if those choices scare you. So what? You're leaving. The devastation in his voice nearly destroyed her. After everything we've shared, you're just walking away? I don't know. The honesty hurt. I don't know if I'm strong enough to love someone whose world is this dangerous. Whose first instinct is control instead of trust. I don't know if I can sacrifice Nia's safety for my own happiness. It doesn't have to be a sacrifice. I can protect both of you. Stop. Jade's voice rose. Stop trying to fix this. Stop trying to control it. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't save everyone, Drake. You can't control everything. And until you understand that, until you trust me to be your equal instead of someone you need to protect, she choked on the words. I can't do this. Drake stood frozen, his face a mask of devastation. So that's it? One fight and you're done. This isn't just a fight. It's a fundamental difference in who we are. Jade grabbed her bag with shaking hands. You spent 17 years building walls and controlling everything because you were scared. I spent 3 years making myself invisible because I was scared. And maybe, her voice broke. Maybe we're both too broken to do this right. Jade. I need to go check on Nia. Make sure she's actually safe. Not just theoretically safe because you've decided she is. The words came out harsh, cruel, but Jade couldn't stop them. I need to figure out if my life is worth appending for a man who doesn't trust me enough to let me make my own choices. She headed for the door. Drake didn't try to stop her, but his voice, raw and wrecked, stopped her in her tracks. I love you. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. Jade's hand trembled on the doorknob. She didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around, because if she saw his face, she'd break. Love isn't enough, she whispered. Not when there's no trust. Not when there's no equality. Not when one person is always deciding what's best for the other. Then what do you want from me? Drake's voice cracked completely. Tell me what you need and I'll. That's the problem, Drake. You can't fix this. I need to fix this. I need to figure out who I am outside of survival, outside of sacrifice, outside of... Her voice broke. Outside of you. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. If you walk out that door, Drake said quietly, I won't follow. I won't call. I won't send protection or money or any of the things I use to control situations. If you want space, I'll give you space. Even if it kills me. It was the right thing to say. The respectful thing. The thing that proved he was listening. So why did it feel like he was letting her go? Jade opened the door, stepped through it, and kept walking, even as every cell in her body screamed to turn around. Behind her, she heard a sound that might have been Drake's control finally, completely shattering. But she didn't look back. Because sometimes love meant walking away, even when it destroyed you both. 3 days. Jade had been gone 3 days, and Drake was losing his mind. He stood in his office at 4 a.m., surrounded by architectural sketches he couldn't finish, staring at the city that had once felt like his kingdom and now felt like a prison. His phone sat silent on the desk. He'd promised not to call, not to follow, not to control. Keeping that promise was killing him. Boss. Angelo appeared in the doorway with coffee Drake wouldn't drink. The Kings are getting bolder. They hit one of our shipments tonight. They're pushing for a response. Let them push. Angelo's eyebrows rose. You're not going to retaliate? What's the point? Drake's laugh was hollow. I've spent 17 years playing this game, Angelo. Building empires. Crushing enemies. Controlling everything I could touch. And for what? I have money, power, respect, and I'm completely alone. You're not alone. You have. I had Jade. Drake's voice cracked on her name. I had 3 weeks of feeling like a human being instead of a weapon. And I destroyed it because I couldn't stop trying to control everything. Because I didn't trust her. Because I was so terrified of losing her that I pushed her away. Angelo was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? Drake looked at his hands. Hands that had built an empire, that had hurt people, that had held Jade with a gentleness he didn't know he possessed. I don't know. For the first time in 17 years, I genuinely don't know. Maybe that's not a bad thing. What? Not knowing. Angelo set down the coffee. You've spent almost 2 decades controlling every outcome, anticipating every move. Maybe it's time to just feel. To let yourself be uncertain. To trust that things will work out even when you can't control them. Drake stared at his oldest friend. When did you become a philosopher? When I watched you fall in love and then sabotage it because you were too scared to let go. Angelo headed for the door, then paused. She was good for you, boss. You smiled more in 3 weeks than you have in 17 years. Maybe that's worth fighting for. Not with power or control, but with honesty. With trust. The door closed. Drake was alone again. He picked up his phone, scrolled to Jade's number, and stared at it for 10 minutes. Then he set it down. If he called now, it would be to control. To fix. To manage the situation the way he managed everything else. But that wasn't what Jade needed. That wasn't what he needed. Drake moved to his desk and pulled out a clean sheet of paper. Not for a building design. For something harder. He picked up a pen and began to write, words he should have said 3 days ago. Jade. I'm not calling because I promised I wouldn't. I'm not sending this letter because that would be just another way of controlling the situation. I'm writing this for me, to figure out what I actually feel beneath all the fear. You were right. About all of it. I've spent 17 years trying to control everything because control felt like survival. If I could anticipate every move, prevent every threat, manage every outcome, then maybe I could keep the people I loved safe. Maybe I could avoid becoming my father, powerless and dead on a kitchen floor. But control is just another word for fear. And I was so afraid of losing you that I did exactly what you accused me of. I treated you like something to be managed instead of someone to be trusted. I don't know how to do this, Jade. I don't know how to love someone without trying to protect them from everything, including themselves. I don't know how to let go and trust that things will be okay even when I can't control the outcome. But I want to learn. If you'll teach me. I love you. Not because you need saving but because you don't. Not because you're fragile, but because you're strong enough to tell me the truth even when it hurts. Not because I want to control you, but because you make me want to be better than the man I've become. I'm not sending this. But I needed to write it. To admit that maybe, for the first time in my life, I need to be the one who's saved. And I can't do that until I stop trying to save everyone else. Drake set down the pen, folded the letter, and placed it in his desk drawer. Then he picked up his phone and made a call that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. Gianna? It's Drake. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need help. And I think it's time I stopped pretending I don't. Across the city, in her cramped apartment that felt emptier than ever, Jade sat on her bed surrounded by the wreckage of her choices. The money Drake had given her sat untouched in an envelope. Nia's apology, they'd talked for hours, cried together, worked through the fear, still echoed in her mind. Her sister had been terrified, but she'd also seen something Jade was only now admitting to herself. She'd been happy. Really, truly happy for the first time in years. You love him, Nia had said simply. I've never seen you smile like that. And yeah, he's made mistakes, but haven't we all? The question isn't whether he's perfect. It's whether you're willing to fight for something real, even when it's scary. Jade had spent 3 days trying to convince herself that walking away was the right choice. The safe choice. The choice that protected Nia and preserved what little stability they'd clawed back. But safety wasn't the same as living. And stability meant nothing if she was just surviving instead of thriving. What would you risk for a chance at real love, security, or the possibility of something more? Share your thoughts below. Her phone buzzed. Not Drake. He'd kept his promise, hadn't called once, which somehow hurt worse than if he'd blown up her phone. It was an unknown number. A text message with a single attachment. A photo of architectural sketches. Beautiful buildings with spaces designed for light and community. And at the bottom, in Drake's handwriting, Community Center, Jade's dream project. Her breath caught. He'd designed a building. For her dream. For teaching literature. For creating safe spaces for kids who needed them. Another text appeared. This is from Angelo. Boss doesn't know I'm sending this. He's been designing this for 3 days straight. Won't eat, won't sleep. Just draws and talks to himself about trust and letting go and being better. Thought you should know. Another photo, Drake at his desk, head in his hands, looking devastated. He's falling apart without you. But he won't call because he promised. Because he's finally trying to respect your choice instead of controlling it. Whatever you decide, make it soon. He's drowning. Jade's hands trembled. This was it. The moment of choice. She could stay here, safe and small and invisible. Could return to survival mode, to 3 jobs and exhaustion and the life she'd known before Drake caught her. Or she could fight. Could risk her heart on a man who was flawed and dangerous and trying desperately to be better. Could choose love over safety, hope over fear, living over merely surviving. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Baby girl, safe isn't the same as happy. Don't spend your whole life protecting yourself from pain. Sometimes pain means you're alive. Means you're brave enough to feel. Jade wiped her tears and grabbed her phone. Not to call Drake. Not yet. She had something to do first. Something she should have done 3 days ago. She needed to choose herself. Not survival mode Jade who sacrificed everything. Not invisible Jade who made herself small. But the Jade who loved literature and dreamed of teaching and deserved to be loved as fiercely as she loved others. She needed to prove to herself, and to Drake, that she could stand on her own before she could stand beside him. Jade pulled out her laptop and opened a document she'd been avoiding for 3 years. Her teaching certification application. The one she'd started before her mother got sick. The one she'd convinced herself she could never finish. She had the money now. Drake's money, yes, but it was hers to use however she wanted. He'd given her a choice, even if he'd made mistakes in how he'd done it. Time to make a different choice. Time to choose her dream. Time to choose herself. As the sun rose over the city, Jade typed late into the morning, filling out applications, writing essays about why she wanted to teach, imagining a future that looked nothing like survival and everything like hope. And when she finally finished, exhausted but electrified, she picked up her phone and typed a single message to Drake. I need to talk to you. But on my terms. My choice. Can you do that? The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting by his phone for 3 days. Anything. Anywhere. Whenever you're ready. I'm here. Jade smiled through her tears. Not because everything was fixed. Not because love had magically solved all their problems. But because for the first time in her life, she was choosing something that wasn't about survival. She was choosing love. On her own terms. With her eyes wide open. Tomorrow. The park where you first called me. 2 p.m. Come alone. No guards, no control, no plans. Just you and me and the truth. I'll be there. Jade set down her phone and looked at her teaching applications, at the architectural sketches still glowing on her screen, at the life she was finally brave enough to build. She'd made her choice. Now Drake had to make his. And tomorrow, they'd find out if love was enough when it was built on trust instead of control, on equality instead of protection, on two broken people choosing to be brave together. The park was quiet at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, dappled sunlight filtering through trees that were just beginning to hint at autumn colors. Jade arrived early, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on jeans and the blue blouse Nia said made her eyes sparkle. Her teaching certification applications were submitted. Her future, for the first time in 3 years, felt like possibility instead of obligation. But none of it would mean anything if she couldn't make Drake understand what she needed. What they both needed. She saw him before he saw her. Drake stood by the fountain where they'd agreed to meet, hands in his pockets, no security detail in sight. He looked thinner, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. But when he turned and their eyes met across the distance, something in his expression made her breath catch. Vulnerability. Raw, unguarded vulnerability. He didn't move toward her. Didn't close the distance. Just waited, letting her control the approach, the pace, the entire encounter. Jade walked to him slowly, each step feeling like a choice. Like a promise. Hi, she said softly when she reached him. Hi. Drake's voice was rough, like he'd been screaming or crying or both. You look beautiful. You look terrible. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Accurate. They stood there, 2 feet apart, the space between them feeling both infinite and negligible. I've been thinking, Jade began and Drake tensed. About us. About what you said. About what I said. And I realized something. What's that? I was asking you to be vulnerable and honest while I was still hiding behind my walls. I accused you of trying to control me, but I was trying to control the situation too, by leaving before I could get hurt. By running instead of fighting. Drake's jaw tightened. You had every right to leave. I overstepped. You did, Jade agreed. But I also didn't give you a chance to learn. To grow. I expected you to be perfect when I'm far from perfect myself. She took a breath. I'm scared, Drake. Terrified, actually. Of needing you. Of building a life with someone whose world is dangerous. Of losing myself in trying to love you. Then why are you here? His voice was barely above a whisper. Because being scared doesn't mean I have to run. Because you make me feel alive instead of just surviving. Because... Her voice cracked. Because I love you too. And I think love is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to make you vulnerable. That's what makes it real. Drake's eyes closed briefly, like he was absorbing the words, letting them sink in. When he opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "I talked to Gianna," he said. "For the first time in 5 years. Told her everything. About you, about how I'd messed up, about how I didn't know how to love someone without trying to control them." "And you know what she said?" Jade shook her head. "She said that I spent 17 years trying to save her, but I never asked what she actually needed. I just decided what was best and bulldozed forward. And eventually, she couldn't breathe around me. Couldn't be herself. So she left." Drake's voice broke. "I didn't want that to happen with you. I couldn't survive that happening with you. So what are you going to do differently?" Drake stepped closer, but still didn't touch her. "I'm getting out." Jade's heart stopped. "What?" "Out of the business. I've been meeting with my lawyers, with people I trust. I'm selling my territories, liquidating assets, setting up legitimate businesses. It'll take time, maybe a year, maybe 2. But I'm done building an empire in fear. I want to build something real. Something I can be proud of." "Drake." "I'm not doing it for you," he continued firmly. "I'm doing it for me. Because you were right. I've spent 17 years being someone I hate. Someone who controls instead of trusts. Someone who's feared instead of loved. And I'm done. Whether you're with me or not, I'm done." Tears streamed down Jade's face. "You're really getting out?" "I'm really getting out. I can't promise it'll be easy or safe. There will be complications, threats, people who don't want to let me walk away. But I'm tired of living in the dark, Jade. You made me remember what light feels like." Jade closed the distance between them, her hands finding his chest. His heart thundered beneath her palm. "I submitted my teaching applications," she said. "Used your money, our money, to finally chase my dream. I'm going back to school part-time to finish my certification. And I told Nia everything. The truth. About you, about us, about what I want." "What do you want?" Drake's hands hovered near her waist, asking permission. Jade covered his hands with hers, guiding them to hold her. "I want you. Not your protection or your money or your control. Just you. Flawed, complicated, trying to be better you. I want us to build something together. As equals. As partners." "Partners," Drake repeated, the word sounding like a revelation. "I like that. But I need promises, Drake. Real ones. Anything. Promise you'll tell me the truth, even when it's hard. Promise you'll trust me to make my own choices, even when they scare you. Promise that when I'm struggling, you'll ask what I need instead of deciding for me." "I promise." Drake's forehead touched hers. "And I need promises from you too." "Like what?" "Promise you won't run when things get hard. Promise you'll fight with me instead of shutting down. Promise you'll tell me when I'm slipping back into old patterns, when I'm trying to control instead of trust." "I promise." Jade's hands slid up to cup his face. "We're going to mess this up sometimes, aren't we?" "Probably." Drake's smile was real now, warm and genuine. "But we'll mess it up together. And we'll fix it together. No more running. No more controlling. Just figuring it out as we go." "I can do that." Jade stood on her toes. "Can you?" Instead of answering, Drake kissed her. It was different from their other kisses. Not desperate or uncertain or even passionate. This kiss was a promise. A choice. A beginning built on truth instead of need, on trust instead of fear. When they broke apart, Drake kept her close, his arms wrapped around her waist, her hands linked behind his neck. "Now you're all mine," he murmured, echoing those first words from the night she'd fallen. But this time Jade understood what he really meant. Now we're both ours, she corrected softly. Together. Together, Drake agreed. I like the sound of that even better. 6 months later. Jade stood in front of her first classroom, 23 high school students staring back at her with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. Her hands trembled slightly as she held up a copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. This semester, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word, we're going to talk about stories. Not just the ones in books, but the ones we tell ourselves about who we are and who we can become. About how sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is rewrite our own narrative. In the back of the room, through the window in the door, she caught a glimpse of Drake. He'd driven her to school on her first day, insisted on waiting to make sure she was okay. Old habits died hard, but they were working on it. He caught her eye and smiled. Then, respecting her space and her dream, he turned and walked away. Jade smiled and turned back to her students. Her students. Her classroom. Her dream. That evening she came home, to Drake's penthouse that was slowly becoming their home, to find him surrounded by blueprints. Not just sketches anymore, but actual architectural plans stamped by engineers. The community center, he explained, looking up with barely contained excitement. It's approved. We break ground in 3 months. And I was thinking, maybe we could include a teaching wing? For adult education, GED programs, things like that. Jade set down her bag and crossed to him. Well, it's our project, isn't it? Your dream, my design, our vision. Drake pulled her into his lap. How was your first day? Terrifying. Amazing. Perfect. She kissed him softly. How was yours? Terrifying. Amazing. Perfect. He gestured to papers spread across his desk. Officially out of the family business as of this morning. All legitimate operations now. No more looking over my shoulder. No more. No more empire built on fear, Jade finished. No more empire at all. Just a man trying to build something good with the woman he loves. What's one dream you've put on hold that deserves a second chance? Drop it in the comments. Your story isn't over yet. Jade traced the architectural plans. Spaces designed for learning, for community, for hope. Gianna called me yesterday. She wants to have dinner next week. With both of us. Drake's eyes widened. She does. She said anyone who could get her stubborn brother to actually change deserves to meet the family properly. Jade grinned. Also, she threatened to kill you if you mess this up. Fair. Drake laughed. A real unguarded laugh that still surprised her with its warmth. I should probably be terrified. Probably. But you'll be fine. We'll be fine. Yeah. Drake pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair, the reality of her presence. We will. Outside, the city glittered with evening lights. Somewhere, Nia was thriving in her college classes, texting Jade pictures of her study group. Somewhere, Angelo was managing Drake's legitimate businesses with the same efficiency he'd once managed criminal operations. Somewhere, the king's family had moved on to other concerns, other territories. And here, in a penthouse that had once felt like a prison, 2 people who'd been breaking under the weight of survival learned what it meant to truly live. Not perfectly. Not without struggles or setbacks or moments when old patterns tried to resurface. But together. As equals. As partners. As 2 people brave enough to catch each other when they fell, and wise enough to let each other stand. Drake caught Jade's hand, the same hand he'd held that first night when she'd been too exhausted to even hold herself up. His thumb traced the same gentle circles on her knuckles. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For falling into my arms. For giving me a chance. For teaching me that love isn't about possession or control. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Jade's eyes filled with happy tears. Thank you for catching me. For seeing me when I'd forgotten how to be seen. For reminding me that I deserve more than just survival. Always, Drake promised. For as long as you'll have me. That might be a very long time. Good. He kissed her forehead, her temples, her lips. Because I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. And in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms with their whole future spread before them like an unwritten story, Jade finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her years ago. Being safe wasn't the same as being happy. Surviving wasn't the same as living. And sometimes the bravest thing you could do was fall. Trusting that someone would catch you, and that together you'd learn to fly. Now you're all mine, Drake whispered against her hair. Now we're both ours, Jade corrected, her smile radiant and real. And that's even better. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. But inside, two hearts beat in sync. Imperfect, hopeful, and finally free. If this story touched your heart, we want to hear from you. What moment resonated most? Have you ever had to choose between safety and love? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else to be brave. And if you believe in second chances and unexpected love, hit that subscribe button. Every week, we bring you stories of real people finding hope in impossible places. Because everyone deserves a love story worth telling. See you in the next one.